Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ingrained and Balanced podcast. Thanks for joining us again. I'm here today with my co host, Marty, and we're going to be talking today. We're actually very lucky to have him for this interview. His name is Justin Bethoney. He is the author of a book called The Mental Wellness Diet. Before we get into it, I'll give you a little information on Justin. He currently has a private practice as a psychiatric nurse practitioner in Bend, Oregon. Okay, Justin has been practicing as a psych NP for a little over 10 years now, seeing both children and adults for psychiatric medication management and therapy in the outpatient setting. Justin's practices primarily focuses on those who are functional, working, attending school, so on and so forth, but suffering with emotional stress, whether it be anxiety, mood disorders, or maybe even ADHD. Justin graduated from the Massachusetts General Hospital Institute of Health Professionals in 2011. In 2020, self-published a book entitled The Mental Wellness Diet: Ancient Wisdom, Evolving Science, and Modern Day Options. The Mental Wellness Diet book is based on the idea that if we feed our brain the nutrients it craves, we will be better able to feel and function at our best. So at this time, without any further ado, let's introduce you to Justin Bethoney. How you doing today, Justin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Are you kidding me? I'm so excited to have you on board. I know Marty is as well. Before we get into it, I don't know, you want to take a few minutes and fill us in on your journey and how you got to this point, especially what motivated you to write this book?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, out of college, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then my mom was a psychiatric RN. And she said, "Hey, you should become a nurse." So initially, I resisted that for a little while. But she told me about how great of a career it is. And it really is. As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, you get to help people, you get to hear people's stories, you get to support people, you get to strategize and try to help people connect some dots. And it's flexible and a great career. And so I've been in love with it ever since I started over 10 years ago. So that's kind of how I got started. And then along the way in school, I discovered Mark's Daily Apple and some other primal podcasts and the ancestral diet and Chris Kresser, and just really interested in all that stuff. And so at the same time, I was learning the conventional side of medicine, which is diagnose and treat according to the cookbook. At the same time, I was learning all about how we evolved, the kind of foods that our bodies need, the kind of stimulation like sunlight and sleep, and how some of that stuff is really important. And the great thing about nursing is instead of the medical model, which is diagnose and treat, it's more about teach a man to fish. It's like how people are coping, how people, what's their meaning and purpose? How are they going to connect the dots for themselves? How are they going to figure out what they want and then put in all that energy to cope and get better and do the journey of life? So married those two together, and that was kind of the foundation of the book.
That's great. That's great. Like I said, I've been reading the book. I'm just about done with it, and I have to say, right off the bat, I love some of the analogies you use, like the coal miners carrying the canary down into the coal mine, and kind of being a tool to a reader to kind of give them some insight and how that relates to how people need to listen to their bodies more. You want to touch on a little bit about that?
Sure, to listen to our bodies and listen to our feelings and emotions. And sometimes emotions can actually be bodily sensation, butterflies or heart racing or sweating or all that stuff we really need to listen to. So the analogy of the canary in the coal mine is back in the old days, they would carry a canary in a cage down to the coal mine. And then when the lethal carbon monoxide was on Earth, you know, the workers are so busy and they couldn't sense it, they would just kind of keep digging away. So that was the analogy for our modern day life. We just get up and we slog through our day, maybe skip breakfast and just kind of work through lunch, and we don't socialize and we just trying to get through the day, just dig, dig, dig. So when a symptom pops up, it's often perceived as an inconvenience or a tragedy or problem. But for the coal miners, if they looked over and they saw the canary keeled over, that was their sign. I got to do something. I got to save myself. I got to get out. And so nowadays in our modern life, so a lot of our symptoms in our bodies, in our hearts, in our emotions are these canaries in the coal mine. trying, it's good information. It's trying to alert us that something's off and we got to either dig deeper, pay attention, or sometimes just get out.
Right, right. The moral of the story, right, is just be cognizant. If you are, your body will tell you what it needs. And I think people are so focused on their daily grind, they're not listening to those inner signs of what might be going wrong negatively, right?
Well, yeah, who wants to pay attention to that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Especially with all these external inputs, our screens, our social media, the news, blah, 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 blah. Instead of focusing on, on what's going on, internally, you can't address it if you don't acknowledge it, right? So
That's scary business.
scary business. Marty, I think you had a question. I'm sorry.
I'm very, very curious about, I mean, I've noticed myself, my mood can sometimes be very dependent upon, what I have eaten, when was the last time I ate, all kinds of things like that, and you get, I know that I struggle with hanger, I guess, if I'm a little hungry, if I haven't eaten well, if I've had, more of, I'm guilty oftentimes of overusing power bars, like some kind of a high protein bar, right? Which, there are worse snacks in the world, but it's a lot better if I have some greens, if I'm having a little bit more diversified diet. I notice that myself. What are some of the real habits that you think are important for people to maintain on a regular basis that can sort of try to avoid those dips, whether it be, getting angry, whether it be getting depressed, whether it be different things like that.
Sure. I'm assuming partly what's happening for you is blood sugar imbalances, blood sugar roller coaster ups and downs. The brain has the ability to sense the amount of glucose in the blood. And like many parts and chemicals and levels in our body, in the middle is best. It's kind of like a Goldilocks principle. So when blood sugar is too high, we have a compensatory mechanism, and insulin is pretty much it, to kind of drive that blood sugar back down. If our blood sugar is too low, we have the instinct of hunger, and which would force us to eat. If we're, let's say, asleep or busy or ignoring that hunger signal, or maybe got into the habit of ignoring it so much we become desensitized to hearing that we're blood sugar is low and we need to refuel. We have another compensatory mechanism, which is our stress hormones. There's a hormone glucagon, but there's also epinephrine and norepinephrine and cortisol. And these stress hormones are the keys that unlock stored blood sugar, which is glycogen, or they could also break down amino acids and protein and break it down into glucose. Again, and that all that breaking down the glycogen or breaking down amino acids will bring that blood sugar level back up. And then your body's satisfied. The price we have to pay is all the extra stress hormones, though. So what you're feeling is maybe the result of that.
Your blood sugar maybe gets low. Your body is going to send some hormones to unlock, basically to unlock food, to create glucose that you need. Now, part of those keys are, and I'm familiar with this, is cortisol, right? So cortisol is when I hear cortisol, I think stress. I get blood work done every once in a while. I know that I have constantly high cortisol. And, I am I guess one of those people that you might call hyper vigilant, right? So I tend to be aware of 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 uh, how things can go wrong all the time, which creates stress. Can be good, but it also can be exhausting. So what I hear you saying is, in order to unlock the glucose, your body sends or creates or sends cortisol.
Norepinephrine circulates within the brain. Epinephrine and cortisol released from the adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and that's under neurological control and hormonal communication. And then so you get released. What you're doing is responding. So if you have high cortisol, that kind of depends. If you have a good release of cortisol in the morning, that could be appropriate. Cortisol is going to help us respond. It's going to help us sustain energy throughout the day.
what I hear you saying is that one of the keys to maybe maintaining your level of cortisol, not letting it get higher than it needs to be or what normally is to have, hey, let me make sure that I'm having regular meals, that I'm listening to my body, that when my body says I'm hungry, that you're going to give it some good fuel.
Let's layer on top the concept of time. Time is really important here. Time is part of the scenario for you where this probably the reason why you're eating power bars or protein bars. They're not the worst thing, like you said, but you probably save time by eating that bar instead of making the salad that you know how to make. So you robbing Peter to pay Paul throughout the body here. So if you save time there, the power bar could fuel you, but sometimes you notice that it's not the best for you. Something goes a little haywire. Time is important also when we're talking about the secretion of cortisol. That's a rhythm throughout the day. It's you secrete most of it in the morning, maybe a little bit of another bump in the afternoon, and that is a rhythm throughout the day. And then as it declines, melatonin can increase. Your body can stop being responding and stop being sustained and stop releasing and mobilizing energy. And you go to sleep. So some points of the day you want to have high cortisol. Some points of the day you want to have low cortisol. Throughout that time of the day, if you have a blood sugar spike and then an insulin followed by an insulin response, that can be blood sugar too high and then crash low. When it crashes low, that can affect the brain in a negative way. It can also maybe trigger more stress hormones to kind of bring it back up. It's too much overshooting is the problem. So it's kind of hard to answer the questions because it's a rhythm. It's throughout the day. And so I think the take home for the listeners would be to pay attention, just like you're doing, Marty. You're saying, like, I noticed right after this happened, I missed this meal or I had that meal. I feel this way. It's about kind of managing the rhythm, which it's pretty instinctual. I mean, there's a lot of science we're talking about today, but there's a lot of instinctual, just knowing what's good for you, trial and error too. So that's kind of how I'd answer the question.
I know sometimes I can feel or I if someone says something like, "Oh, like, if I'm at a restaurant, someone will mention, like, Brussels sprouts, or someone will mention, like, green beans," and all of a sudden I'm thinking, "Oh, that sounds amazing." Usually, I'm thinking afterwards, I'm like, "Wow, I haven't had some greens in, wow, it's been a little bit." Here, like, my body, like, as soon as wow, that's exactly it, and you can, when you start eating it, you feel like you're doing something good for yourself. Greens are always good, but there are some times where you're like, "I need them." I get what you're saying when you say, "Hey, your body has a pretty good, self-regulating mechanism if you listen to it."
Yeah, and then the second step would be to anticipate. Low blood. We have busy mornings at home. Sometimes a protein shake will save my marriage that day. I'm not getting cranky or irritable or hangry myself, and then not knowing why. I figured that one out a couple of years ago, and I just obviously Justin needs to get the protein and calories and blood sugar in place for the brain to function optimally at 8:30 in the morning. And then in our modern day life, it's kind of like pulling us to just take all these shortcuts. And that's a big part of the book, as you guys have probably noticed.
So how do you train yourself to listen to your body? Like, not everybody, I think not everybody is going to be really good at that because most people haven't been taught that's super important.
Yeah. Well, in functional medicine, they talk about downstream and upstream. Functional medicine is about prevention. In conventional medicine, which would be the opposite, I guess. Conventional medicine is amazing at acute illness. If you need a surgery or broken bone or something like that, there's no better way to go than conventional medicine. In our American hospital systems are amazing. But if you have chronic conditions, things that are not going to kill you right away, but are lingering, functional medicine is really good. In conventional medicine, if your blood sugar is creeping up, the doctor won't say it this way, but they'll basically say, okay, blah, 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 come back to me when you have diabetes and then I can treat you. And a functional medicine doctor would say, okay, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you getting movement and exercise? How's your stress level? Here's, various supplements. And then here's a kind of a good way to eat and manage your diet. Let's prevent you from getting to the point of type 2 diabetes. And so that's what functional medicine doctors are all about, pretty much. So in functional medicine, upstream and downstream, if you have any kind of symptom, that would be downstream. And so functional medicine doctors would look kind of upstream. So if anger or sadness or anxiety is a symptom for somebody, that's kind of downstream. And it could be different what's going on upstream for every individual. But depression, one of the main contributors upstream is poor sleep. And a lot of us struggle with that. Another upstream kind of cause or major contributor is sedentary lifestyles, not really exercising, not getting the blood flow to the brain, not getting the blood flow, which carries the oxygen and the nutrients to the brain, not managing our lifestyles in certain ways. So up at the top in this upstream, it's sleep, diet, exercise, stress management. And they're not very sexy. Who wants to talk about that? Give me the supplement, the creatine, this and that.
You can't make a lot of money off of that stuff. So, well, what I hear you saying, when you say upstream, we're really talking about cause. And when you're saying downstream, we're really talking about a little bit more effect, right? So
Yeah, pretty
you,
much.
you, you notice these effects. Hey, I'm feeling blue. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling sad. That's the effect, right? So you want to be able to notice, hey, these are my feelings. And especially as guys, we weren't always taught to like notice what our feelings are or care about them very much, right? So right, I mean, I know I wasn't. I was raised in a German household, so the feelings were not something that were ever discussed. So I love that. I love the, hey, notice the effect, and then hey, let's look for the cause, and those simple things that you mentioned: exercise, diet, sleep, habits. That's what this show is about. Am I right, Lonnie? I mean,
On the simpler side and the more, relatable side for our listeners, it's one of the reasons why we preach habits, daily habits, because when your body, physically gets used to the, more healthier things on a daily basis, you're more tuned in. So to answer your point, Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, is when you're in more of a healthier habitual lifestyle, you're more perceptive to the negative signs and the more, stress coming in and ailments starting to hit you. But when you're out of it and you're not living a daily positive, healthy habit lifestyle, you're a little lost and it's harder to perceive these negative ailments that are creeping in. Does that sound right?
Totally. And I guess I'll try to tie it home for you guys. It's bewildering. It's confusing when you have anger or sadness or anxiety. And then it's like, all right, that guy Justin said something about blood sugar, but I don't know if I have a blood sugar issue. Maybe it's my gut bacteria, or, maybe it's like I have toxins and I need a liver detox. And, it's kind of like, hold on, if we can use you, Marty, for a second, like a little irritability, mood off, maybe the anxiety, maybe mood stuff, these things kind of happen. You don't have to focus on the sciencey part of blood sugar, but you can trust me and say that I'm not selling anything other than a book and hope that, sleep, diet, exercise, stress management. Let's take sleep at first. If you're not sleeping, that really alters blood sugar regulation. It creates a state of insulin resistance. So you need more and more insulin, and you're on more and more of that insulin, blood sugar high, blood sugar low, need to eat, feeling crappy. So you don't sleep, it's going to cause a blood sugar issue. Downstream from that is some of the anxiety and the anger. If you're not exercising, exercise helps absorb blood sugar so you're not so reliant upon the insulin. Exercise also gets that oxygen flow to the brain, and studies show that that helps the emotional centers of the brain be, kind of more balanced. Stress management, if obviously that one's more of a easy connecting of the dots. If you're stressed out, you're going to be more on edge, more anxious and more angry. And then diet, it's also kind of commonsensical. I mean, if you eat quick burning carbs or, not enough protein or maybe not enough fat or just all vegetables or no vegetables, if it's imbalanced, that's gonna not be like a good factory of stocking your factory with fuel to kind of keep it sustained and running in a balanced, smooth way. So if you run into these problems, everybody can just go back to sleep, diet, exercise, and just start there. And I guarantee you're going to feel somewhat better. And you don't need to know all the science.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah. I love this because I think, we focus a lot on the physical on this show. And, I think people tend to, say, hey, I'm going to exercise because I want to look good. I'm going to exercise because I want to be able to physically perform well, or I'm going to change my diet because of this or that physical reason. But what I hear you saying is, hey, like these things make huge, difference in your, mental outlook, in your mental well-being, in the way you feel every day. And on the other side, if you learn to listen to how you feel and what your body is trying to tell you, you can probably use that to make some great changes in what you eat, how you exercise, all that kind of stuff that are going to lead to positive changes in your life.
Yeah, upward spiral.
Hey, Justin, can we touch a little bit on like societal issues? What do you think is happening out there the most right now that is affecting people's just mental well-being and creating the most stress on the average day Joe? And how can they address it?
Yeah, that this kind of gets back to the carbon monoxide that the canary kind of notices first, but we wouldn't. In modern day life, I didn't invent the term, but in the book, I used the term exceptionalism. And there's just a subtle but persistent pressure on all of us, I feel, to be exceptional in some way. Good at this, wealthy, you know, fancy shoes, known for this, attractive, the good mama bear. There's all these identities that we take on, and we put so much of our energy and attention and effort into being exceptional in some ways. And I think it's true for most people. There's probably people out there this is not true for, but what's the cost of doing business there? It kind of gets back to that time factor. If so much of our attention and efforts and our thoughts even are dedicated to being, some sort of exceptional, well, then we have to take from over here to give to over here. Well, we're not going to be sitting down to make ourselves like a really healthy magnesium bomb salad, which is in the back of the book. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be sending out extra emails, or we're going to be plucking our eyebrows, or getting an extra workout, or, scheduling Botox, or whatever we're doing. So exceptionalism, I guess it sounds pretty critical, but I've noticed it's a really subtle and persistent pressure in our society, which was your question. And I think it's kind of destructive to our minds, to our bodies, and to our social relationships a lot of times.
It's funny. One of the things I preach is mindset. You know what I mean? It's like it starts with mindset, and I think when we get busy with life, especially, you're trying to gain that success, when people define it as different things, or exceptionalism, whatever it is, but they focus too much on, you know, their business, their materialistic things in their lives, and so what is important? You have to start with that mindset. And once you start addressing, okay, my mental health, my physical well-being, my relationships with family, once you deem those as the most important things, that starts there. Then you can start addressing, okay, putting a roadmap in place of what you could do to make these things better. But you have to start with that mindset, you know.
I think the first step there is permission. We have to give ourselves permission to be regular, non exceptional.
And that exceptional is an interesting word, right? So to be the exception means that like you are comparing, right? So you're not looking just to yourself. You're not comparing yourself to yesterday. You're comparing yourself to, usually when we say exception, others like you, right? So if I'm going to go after being exceptional, then in order to do that, I have to compare, right? I have to compare against other people, which to me is always like, I always think of that as a danger sign. Like, yeah, we're all going to look and say, we do that sometimes, but for me, it's very dangerous to do that on a regular basis, or I guess too often. Like, I would rather compare myself against maybe what I was yesterday or what I think I can be tomorrow versus to the guy down the street, my next door neighbor, the dude I went to high school with, or whatever. Like, to me, that's where people often get into trouble.
Yeah. Well, take it one step further. What if you're comparing yourself or competing against people who are also seeking to be exceptional? If everyone's exceptional, no one's exceptional. It's a dead end.
How about we touch just a little bit on diet? And we always say we hate that word diet because to Marty and I, diet means a temporary
Temporary.
fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if somebody that's just joining this podcast and they're not tuned in with their bodies, or they're just addressing themselves on a healthy everyday basis, but they feel stressed, they're not sleeping well, without knowing what their diet is, what they're eating currently. What are some things, some foods, some habits, eating habits that you initially tell people they should start right away? Obviously, the vegetables and beans and everything else, but if there's something you could just give somebody this a little bit of advice to start today, what would it be?
Nutrient density is the principle. And with nutrient density, it's for every bite of food you take in, how many nutrients, vitamins, minerals, protein factors, all those things are jam packed into that one bite of food. So a Funyun or a Dorito is lower on the nutrient density. The organ meats are up there. Animal meats are up there. Shellfish and fish are up there. Next would be fruits and vegetables. Fermented foods, due to the probiotic benefit, and the fiber is up there too. And then for brain health, connective tissue, which is the collagen peptides type of stuff, or tripe, different kinds of foods that is connective tissue in some manner, or bone-in meat, that kind of stuff. So those would be the add, and then subtract would be, the usual suspects: sugar. For some people, grains are not going to work for you. For some people, legumes. It can get individual, but pretty much sugar. Forgetting to eat, that should be subtracted, and probably overeating would be the main ones to subtract. So starting there, I mean, everybody kind of wants a diet book or a cookbook, or a program to get started, because it's so much to think about. But the organ meats tend to be kind of gross for most of us who haven't grown up eating it. That they come in desiccated little capsules. Some good companies out there that sell those. You can start there, and then like Marty's instinct, a salad, one or two salads a day. That is just gonna be a pretty good idea. That just starting there, I think, would be a great starting point.
Great. Great, great. You touched earlier on sleep hygiene, right? Getting better sleep. We all know that. Um, so if you could tell somebody what are simple do's and don'ts to try and make sure you get a better night's sleep. Should I not eat carbs after 7 p.m.? Should I not have, fruit after whatever? Is there some simple go-tos that you would recommend?
That one, the circadian rhythm is a 24-hour plus like 1 minute clock in our brain. And it's really interesting. And the thing that sets that clock is light, pretty much, our exposure to light on our face and on our eyes. So, number one, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, let's get up at the same time every morning. Start to. Obviously, if you don't go to sleep till 3 a.m., it would feel better that day to sleep in until 11. Uh, for the longer term, you got to break that habit. To fall asleep at night, you got to wake up in the morning and get some sort of light exposure. Um, in August, out here in Oregon, I would walk outside and step on my front lawn. It's now December, and so that's not an option anymore. But I still pretty much, try to manage the wake up time to help with the bedtime. If you have difficulty staying asleep, sometimes that could be stress. Sometimes it could be anxiety, or a sign of depression too. A lot of times it's that blood sugar roller coaster thing. where if throughout the night, if the blood sugar dips and you have to release the stress hormones to compensate, to bring it back up, the price you pay is during the middle of your sleep, a release of stress hormones, which will wake you up. You might have a racing mind, you might be fully alert, you might have the urge to get out of bed and run around, or you might, you know, just be kind of feeling tense. If you have those signs, it would be better to look towards the blood sugar regulation, and then, cleaning up your diet and exercising more and managing your stress.
Great, great. Marty, you have any other questions for Justin?
I'm just gonna say, like, the thing, I guess the biggest thing that I'm taking, there's lots of things to take away from this, but the biggest thing that I'm hearing then, and that I know that I'm gonna take away is, hey, I need to get better at listening to my body. I need to understand how important it is to be good at listening to my body and to actually do it. That's something that I guess, yeah, I know, but I forget. And I don't always think maybe it's as important as it really is. And I think this is a great reminder that we all need to do what we can to get better at listening to our bodies, because our body is like such a wonderful, and our brain such wonderful machines. They have such great regulating mechanisms, which nobody understands them all. So sometimes it's best just to listen to them. We don't have to understand them all. We just listen to them. If we're hungry, let's eat something, and we know what we should eat and what we shouldn't. So let's try to eat as well as we can. That kind of good stuff.
I would add, or tired, or angry, or sad, or uneasy, any kind of physical sensation that all needs. If you don't pay attention to that stuff, your body will reach up a hand and slap you in the face eventually. It may actually be a disease, or a panic attack, or a depressive episode, or like full on insomnia. If you don't listen, your body will make you.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. Justin, I think we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And for all those of you out there, I'm telling you right now, check out his book, Mental Wellness Diet. I'll tell you right now, it's an easy read. It's a lot of relatable stuff that, opens your eyes. It's like, oh my God, that, I can try this, I could try that. And it's things that can just, again, get the ball rolling in your lives to start addressing, stress or emotional pain, whatever it might be. But check out, I have a link down below on the page. You can access his book and his social media pages. And Justin, again, thanks again, buddy. And we're going to be talking again soon. I'd love to have you on sometime in the future. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thanks for the time.
All right,
Hey,
Justin.
thank you.
All right, guys, make sure if you haven't done yet to subscribe to the channel, hit like, and give us a review on this episode. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you soon on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.